NZ Aerosports, Icarus Canopies, now Gyro. That's right, we've rebranded, and Gyro is our next generation. It honours our founder, as that's the name we knew him by, but Gyro also marks the start of a new chapter. And not to be biased, but it's going to be fucking epic. Long story short, we're more us than ever, so if you're new to the sport, or even a Sky God Ninja Turtle, welcome. I think our valiant leader Lucy, Gyro's daughter, says it best.
And we still got that fuck yeah attitude. Rebrand! Woo!
Rebrand woo indeed, Lucy. Anyway, head over to gyro.com for more info and get amongst you legends.
I was 19, broke, unemployed, and sold my girlfriend's canopy for drug money. So I thought I better sew her a new one. What a sentence, and what a story. This describes the humble yet outrageous beginnings of NZ Aerosports, the home of Icarus Canopies, in the words of our founder himself. From getting a paratrooper toy from his mom, watching parachutes at the DZ as a 6-year-old, jumping off the wharf with a parachute made from bed sheets, doing his first jump at 16, sewing his first canopy on a borrowed machine at 19, and starting to sell parachutes out of a garage in 1986, Paul Gyro Martin had an undying love for the sky. Our company started with one man with the wildest of spirits and a true blue sky dream, a renegade. In the time that Gyro created and ran the Icarus Canopies brand until he passed away in 2017, he pushed everything he had to its limits. We miss him, and we always will. Gyro is the next generation of NZ Aerosports. It honors our founder, of course, because it was the name we all knew him by, but Gyro the rebrand also marks the start of a new chapter, our next jump. Gyro is the space between sound and silence, art and science, chaos and calm. Gyro is a state of epic tranquility that transcends understanding. That moment, in the door, in free fall, mid-swoop, where nothing but the present exists. A perfect balance of euphoria and thrill. Gyro captures our passion for flying and our commitment to designing break-the-fucking-rules canopies that deliver pilots pure, wild flight. Hey gang, so I got a new book out. It's called The Upside of Fear, and it's exactly what you think it's about. It's about the good side of, well, getting scared. In it, we talk not only about the science and biology behind fear, but the psychology as well. And it's not just coming from me, it's coming from some of the best in the sport. Omar Alhigelan, Jeff Provenzano, Maxine Tate, and so many more have contributed their sometimes terrifying stories to the book to help you overcome your fear. So head to the lunaticfringepodcast.com. You're going to find the link to the book there, as well as the other books. It's available in ebook, paperback, hardback, and audiobook right now.
Coming straight from the cockpit, it's another episode of Lunatic Fringe with the fucking pilot.
Ready, set, go! Back in the can for another edition of the Lunatic Fringe podcast, and somebody that I just missed in my travels around the United States working-wise. Let's just get into it. Who the fuck are you, and what do you do?
I'm Brian Naiman, and I help run Skydance Skydiving.
Dude, that is so awesome. We got to talk a little pre-podcast, and we'll get into it, but I'm envious, and I'm also a little pitiful. Because
be a DZO, they said. It'll be fun, they said.
Yeah, that's where you have my pity is I actually just talked to Sherry Butcher, who runs Air Ohio, and I'm like, you guys are a special breed of stupid.
We saw a chance to cut away from our normal jobs, and we did it. And yeah, it's just as stressful as a normal job, but at least you're doing it for a place that you love.
Which is awesome. It really is. And I mean, I say it jokingly. I mean, I can't imagine being a DZO myself, because I know as a jumper and as a jump pilot how truly difficult we can be to work with. But I also know that the people that are good at it they're just amazing, you know?
Yeah.
So, before we get too deep into the Skydance stories, which is absolutely going to happen, let's talk about how you got started, not necessarily in skydiving, but in anything extreme.
Well, I mean, those are kind of one and the same for me, to be honest. I did not do extreme things before getting into skydiving. I grew up, I went to high school, I went straight into college for an engineering degree. I fully expected that while I was in college, I was going to meet somebody and fall in love and wind up having, one and a half or two and a half children in a house in the suburbs somewhere. And it just didn't work out that way for me. I moved out to California. I was working for an engineering company. And eventually I randomly got the chance to go on a tandem skydive. And that opened up this rest of my life that I'm in now.
So it wasn't anything that you were aiming towards at all. I mean, literally nothing about you was like, all right, let's go jump off a shit.
Not really. The first time I remember really ever having the thought that I would want to go skydiving was in college. I went and saw one of the Warren Miller documentaries, and it happened to be the year that he featured some wingsuit base, or like wingsuit flybys of the ski slopes. And I remember seeing that and thinking like, man, that is really fucking cool. That would be awesome to do.
Mm.
Um, Before that, I don't know. I've always been afraid of heights, and I maybe always had this thought that someday I wanted to go skydiving. But that someday was like a someday that just never came until a situation presented itself.
It's kind of one of those things, right? It's something people say. Like
Yeah,
everybody I've ever met, almost everybody I've ever met has said, "Oh yeah, I'd love to go skydiving someday." But
yeah,
they and I all both know someday ain't gonna come.
probably not. In my case, I got lucky, and the universe conspired to give me a perfect opportunity to go.
So now, where'd you grow up and go to college?
I grew up on the east side of Michigan, kind of the suburbs of Detroit, and I went to college in Kalamazoo, Michigan, a place called Western Michigan University.
And for engineering.
For engineering, yeah, I always loved chemistry and thought I wanted to be a chemist or a high school chemistry teacher, and then started going to school, or rather, I went to like the thing where you go and you meet all the department heads and you talk to them.
Sure.
And I was talking with the chemistry department, and then this guy came up and tapped me on the shoulder, and he goes, "Hey, how do you feel about making money with a bachelor's degree?" And I said, "That sounds great." He goes, "I'm Dr. Abu Bakr. I'm the lead of the chemical engineering department. Come talk with me."
Hmm.
So that was it. Chemical engineering it was.
Nice. I mean,
Yeah.
I suppose it's just in whatever direction you get aimed, and especially when you get inspiration, and you do kind of have a Heisenberg look to you.
I did not at the time.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, this
Yeah.
could have gone DZO or meth manufacturer. It seems like two reasonable paths.
Of course, every single lab I ever had in my chemical engineering program, the lab director professor would always make a joke about like, don't let the feds infiltrate your drug ring.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it's got to be the standard go-to joke.
yeah, yeah.
So you go through you're on a path for this career, and obviously now you've dramatically shifted gears. Was that specifically because skydiving entered your life, or did you get into the chemical engineering field and just go, oh fuck, this is not what I was hoping?
So kind of both. I mean, I got into the chemical engineering career. I got a job offer in California. I moved out here, and I worked for about, I guess, 3 years. I moved out here in 2008. And the whole time I was doing it, it was like it was a good job, and sometimes it was fun, but I never really loved it. I never had a passion for it.
Hmm.
It was like a good thing to do to make money, to go do other things. And I just lost my train of thought. What was the rest of the question?
Just why you kind of faded away from the chemical engineering.
Oh, yeah. So like I said, I never had a passion for it. I never loved it. Maybe if I had gotten in with a different company, that would have been different, but the situation was what the situation was. And then I happened to be traveling for work. I was in Oklahoma, Tulsa, and one of my buddies was also an engineer working for a different company. He already had like a B license and he had brought his rig with him. We were sharing a hotel room in Tulsa, Oklahoma that week.
Hmm.
And like Wednesday night, we're sitting in the beds at the DoubleTree eating our, DoubleTree chocolate chip walnut cookies. And he goes, "Hey man, you're always talking about wanting to go skydiving. I brought my gear with me. I'm going to go do a couple of jumps at this 182 drop zone after work tomorrow. You should come do a tandem." And I said, "Okay." And we went. And here I am.
I mean, that's I defy a non-jumper to be roomies in a hotel with a skydiver that's got his rig with him and get out of it without at least going to the drop zone, if not making a skydive.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, there's no fucking way. Because let's face it, if you remove the fear that comes with the thought of a non-jumper making a skydive, and you remove the potential for death, it's the coolest vibe ever. Like, you know how it is. As soon as a skydiver starts talking about jumping, especially to a non-jumper, you can feel the energy just oozing out of us.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
infectious.
It's it's it's
It's like
palpable.
herpes.
Yeah, exactly. Ooh, hopefully not.
Well, once you get bit, that's it, man. As soon as you got it, you got it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So you go out and you make that first tandem. How was that first jump? Was it nerve-wracking? Was it just exciting? How did you vibe with it?
I mean, it was amazing. We showed up and I would love to go back to that drop zone now if it's still there. I think it is. And I would love to see the place now, and see how it compares with my memory. But, I remember it being, kind of a crappy looking hangar. Um, it was a 182. If my memory is correct, there was no door on it whatsoever. I think we flew the entire like climb to altitude and jump run with no door. And I just remember sitting there, next to the door, next to the pilot, being pretty freaked out, thinking I'm going to fall out of the airplane, of course, And then I just remember, when the tandem instructor told me, like, okay, get your left foot out on the step, get your right foot out on the step, hands on your harness. I don't remember feeling fear. I just remember feeling like a robot obeying commands. I just did the things that he told me to do. We left the airplane. I was so sure that my heart was going to explode. I mean, like, and then I remember him saying, if you feel like you can't breathe, go ahead and scream, right? And I just, let it all out. And yeah, I mean, total sensory overload. It seemed like it was over in the blink of an eye. And as soon as I remember, like, conscious thought picking up again, thinking, like, oh my God, this is something I have to do again. I
Right.
have to do this. I was
It's
so sure, hooked immediately.
it's funny you describe it like that because I remember my first jump being overloading at a certain point, and then just like you said, almost coming out of it, like snapping back to reality that I was not a part of for a brief second. Like I remember leaving the airplane and up and down went away,
Yeah.
and I remember vaguely seeing a glimpse of the airplane disappearing, and then there was some fucking guy sticking a camera in my face, and then I came back to it going, "Oh, holy shit, I did it. I'm here."
Yeah.
Then it's just the most amazing, like I can't believe this is happening kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you make that first jump. Your friend that took you out there must have been giggling when you landed, especially if you loved it that much.
He must have been able to tell right away that I was hooked. I mean, I'm sure on the drive back to the hotel together, I must have been asking him all kinds of questions about, like, how do I start? What do I do? Where do I go? Um, he had learned through the IAD progression instead of AFF. And so I remember when I started calling drop zones in Northern California, because that's where I was living at the time, I was trying to find a place that did IAD because I had this, I don't know, perception that it was somehow better or safer. Like going straight into free fall seemed like pretty extreme to me as a
Mhm.
student. And of course, I called everybody, and everybody was like, no, we don't do IAD. Like, we do AFF, right? And then I was living in Davis at the time, and I just happened to find that Skydance was here. And it was like, man, I've been living in this town for 3 years, and I had no idea that there was a drop zone like 15 minutes down the road.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
it's even funnier from my perspective with that particular drop zone because I was born and raised in Sacramento. Um,
Okay.
I started my skydiving career in Vegas. I had
Okay.
no idea that there was a drop zone in Northern California until I was trying to figure out where I would go for winters away from Cross Keys. And I was flight
Oh,
training at the time. So I'm like, well, I can flight train at Executive Airport in Sacramento because that's where I learned how to fly when I was a kid. So I can do my stuff out there. I wonder if there's a drop zone around, and found Skydance and went out and actually even had to have an interview to start working there. But I remember the same thing, being blown away, going, "How can this place have been here like my entire fucking life?" And
yeah.
I had no clue.
Yeah. And that would have been with Ray Farrell that you came out and interviewed?
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was the funniest interview I've ever had, and I've told the story a bunch of times on the podcast before. But I used to work for a guy by the name of Michael Hawks,
Okay.
who owned and operated Skydive Las Vegas, and
Mm,
Hawks was notorious for being a not nice guy, like
mm,
nightmare DZO, nightmare.
yeah.
So when I sat down to interview with Ray, I actually had to make a CV, which who the fuck makes a CV in skydiving? But
Skydiving. Yeah.
yeah, he reads through it and he's, oh, you work for Michael Hawks, so you know how to work for a hard ass. And I took a gamble because Ray he's tough to read.
Yeah.
And I looked him in the eyes and I'm like, fuck it, roll the dice. And I said, Ray, if you are twice the prick people say you are, you're only half the prick that he is. And he
Yeah.
hired me on the spot.
Ah, nice.
Yeah. Yeah, like I love Ray. Ray and I would butt heads every once in a while because I was an instructor for him and a pilot for him for 4 years. Um,
Sure.
anybody's gonna butt heads. I mean, we're all alphas, but I love the guy to death.
Yeah.
So you started your AFF career in Skydance then?
I did. Yeah. Like I said, I was living in Davis. I called around, found out Skydance was like right down the road. Um, I must have called and booked an FJC. I don't think you could book it online at the time. And then I showed up and wandered around, and somebody directed me to where I needed to go. And um,
Nice.
yeah,
So, and you said too, pre-podcast, your AFF instructor was a guy by the name of Kim that I used to work with back in the day.
yeah, Kim. I remember him as being like a kind of tall, stringy Australian guy. Seemed like pretty to the point, pretty gruff. Like if you don't arch, you're gonna die, sort of guy. Um, and and yeah, I remember showing up. I remember going into the classroom. I remember getting started and being so nervous, right? And going through the first half of the first jump course and starting to feel more comfortable, right? We're going through all the basic stuff, body position, the airplane, landing stuff. And then Kim goes, all right, go, we're going to take 45 minutes for lunch. So I take 45 minutes for lunch. We come back and he goes, okay, now we're going to talk about emergency procedures. And getting into emergency procedures and all the fear that I felt in the morning came right back. It was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, what am I here doing? And then we went through it, and then we went and we did the jump.
Kind of
And it was a
exciting
pretty,
though.
yeah, yeah.
Now, did you jump the Cessna or the Pack?
Oh man, I have no idea. It was probably the pack.
Because you said you started there in 2011. I left in 2010, and they were still flying the Pack 750 and hadn't moved over to Caravans yet.
Yeah, I think it was a pack 750 because I remember later that summer doing a lot of jumps out of the pack. So yeah, it
Yeah,
must have been the pack.
yeah, that was still the workhorse back then for sure.
Yep. Yep.
So obviously that first jump went well, and you continued on. You
I
go through
wouldn't
your.
say it go I wouldn't say it went well actually. I was a horrible AFF student.
Were you really?
Oh, dude, I was so overloaded. Like, I was not calm or graceful in free fall at all. Um, I'm pretty sure I like barely did the dive flow. I think I pulled for myself. Kim probably helped me. I don't know. And then I remember being under canopy, and some people talk about when you get under canopy, how everything slows down. That did not happen for me. I was still like blazed on adrenaline. I remember not being able to find the drop zone. I remember the radio screaming at me on my shoulder, and like Kim just sounded really, really pissed. I'm pretty sure I flared at like 40 feet because I thought like I'm pretty sure I just did 360s over the landing area until I flared way too high and then like totally ate shit on the landing and came back and did it again better the next day.
Sure, sure. You
Not
know what?
not a graceful AFF student.
I'll tell you what though, it strikes me as kind of poignant that most of the active skydivers that I know that were horrible students and really fought with fear and anxiety and getting over the hump, so to speak, are the ones that have the biggest passion for the sport.
Mhm.
I mean, when it's such a challenge to overcome, and I was the same. I did well in my course, but I really had to fight the fear of skydiving.
Yeah.
So I really, when I realized, oh hey, wait a second, I can do this, and not only can I do this, but I'm even having a little bit of fun doing this, then I'm all in.
Yeah.
It's funny, right? Because the people that seem to just don't have a really hard time with it and blaze through it seem to be a little less motivated than the people that really had to work for it.
I guess I could see that. I mean, the more hard work you have to put in, the greater of an achievement it feels like.
Sure. Now,
Yeah.
you're living in Davis. You've gone through your AFF at Skydance. You're still working as a chemical engineer. Where does the switchover start to happen for you?
So that kind of started to happen in the end of 2015. So midway through 2015, I knew pretty much early on that I wanted to get an AFF rating. As soon as I had gotten an A license, I kind of knew that that was something I wanted to do. Um, so I was jumping the first couple years with the intent of getting my AFF rating. 2015, that summer, I got my AFF rating. And then at the end of 2015, I actually quit my engineering job and I took a bicycle to New Zealand
Uh-huh.
and I wound up spending 6 months. I did a bicycle tour down the length of New Zealand and I spent another 3 months cycling across Australia.
Awesome.
And after I came back from that, I wound up for a couple of years doing this thing where I would work 6 months for the engineering company. I would contract myself to them. And then I would take summers off and I would do 6 months worth of just living at the DZ and working as an instructor in skydiving. And that went on for a couple of years. I did a season up in Montana in 2019. I had gotten my tandem rating by then, so I was doing tandems out of 182 all summer long. And then 2020, COVID happened. I got sucked back into the engineering company because I was afraid of COVID. I wanted health insurance,
Sure.
and the company offered to hire me back in full time. So I got pulled back into the engineering company, and I was just doing it to make money and put money in the bank. I had a number that I wanted to get to, and say, okay, here I'm financially stable. I want to retire, quote unquote.
Sure.
And I did it for 2 years, and then in 2022, I couldn't do it anymore. The company was going through changes every day, every week. The morale was horrible. I couldn't wake up every day doing something that I didn't love. I
Sure.
was just doing it for a paycheck. And so I started looking for another job. And Chris Peterson, who's the owner of Skydance at the time, he came to me. We were good friends. We lived together. And he said, why don't you just come, help me at the drop zone? We'll make you an offer. We'll bring you in as a partner. And I said, yeah. So there was kind of this multi-year switch. There wasn't a hard cutoff, but it kind of flowed. Looking back, it flowed pretty naturally from one to the next.
Well, and I mean, it sounds like, especially considering the pandemic and everything, having the opportunity to go back to the stable job, especially stepping away from a sport that obviously took enormous hits during the pandemic. I
Yeah,
mean, you kind of had the best of both worlds there.
yeah,
I mean, I obviously, the same people that I do. A lot of people that were incredibly hard hit because of the pandemic, because you just couldn't do anything. I mean, for fuck's sake, we strap people to us for a living.
yeah, yeah. Try
This-
explaining to the health department how that's social distancing.
yeah. There's no social. I mean, I suppose social distancing in skydiving is you're not in someone.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, that's about it. So yeah, I mean, I was kind of lucky when it hit because I was flying full time for Skydive Dubai, and I was under a contract, so I was salaried regardless. And although
Okay.
we took salary cuts and that stuff, we were down for a while, and we were able to get started up again relatively quickly. But I mean, the States, it kind of depended on where you were, I guess, but the States really had to struggle through it.
I think we were shut down here at Skydance for about 3 months before we were able to reopen. And at first, it was just AFF and fun jumpers.
Hmm.
The county didn't want us doing tandems. And I can't remember exactly when we were able to restart with tandems as well. But yeah, it was a big slowdown there for a while.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, well, I was a slowdown for everybody, obviously.
Yeah.
From in air sports specifically, I mean, the wind tunnels that were closed down forever. I mean, talk about a recirculating germ tube.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, so that was the bummer too for people that wanted to jump, is you didn't even have the option to use that to get away from all the fucked up stuff that was happening because both your options were closed down. I mean, that was it.
I got to imagine maybe paragliding and hang gliding schools did pretty well that year.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff that you might not have gotten into for sure, I would imagine took off quite a lot. Where I live now, they didn't have any difference because everybody's in the woods. They just did their shit. You know,
Yeah, fair. Yeah,
you just get away and do your stuff.
yeah.
So you go from the college to making a jump and deciding you want to be a skydiver to chemical engineering. What's the family thinking about all this? Because before then, you weren't doing anything crazy or extreme, and now you're jumping out of airplanes.
Yeah, I mean, the most extreme thing I did in college was go snowboarding. And, I know that some people consider snowboarding or skiing to be an extreme sport, or I don't. Obviously, we don't now, but um, what did my family think? They were incredibly supportive pretty
Nice.
much all the time. I was incredibly lucky to have a mom who encouraged me to follow my passion, and follow my dream. Uh, of course, I didn't tell my mom before going to the drop zone that I was going to go skydiving. I did the classic. I called her afterwards, and told her, "Hey, mom, guess what I just did? I just went for a skydive," and she was so excited. She said, "Oh my God, that's amazing!" And I said, "Yeah, and I think I want to learn. I think I want to
Yeah,
get my license." And she was stoked. She loved it.
that's awesome. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, mine was relatively supportive as well, and all through my career, although, um, and you would know this now, as you get further on in your career and things happen and you lose friends along the way and stuff, it gets to be a harder conversation you have to have with family when you're an active jumper. And I
yeah.
remember mine kind of breathing a sigh of relief when I told them I wasn't jumping full time as an instructor anymore. I was going to be flying the plane full time. And
Hmm.
they were like, "Oh, that's amazing." And I didn't have the heart to tell them that it's so much more dangerous to stay in the plane than it is to jump out.
Exactly, right?
Like, so much more shit goes wrong with the plane than a parachute,
Yeah, yeah.
you know.
And you
But it's
don't you don't have you don't have a reserve plane when the engine quits working.
no, no, no. Yeah, if a wing snaps off, you're not going to sprout another wing, you know.
Wow.
So yeah, that was a fun one to try and explain down the road. But it's always nice. I've had a few guests on that have said that yeah, family just hated it and couldn't stand the fact that they were jumping, and especially when their jumping careers led them towards shit like base jumping.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and I was lucky. I never crossed that bridge, so I never had to have that conversation with my parents.
I did a base course, and that was I was scared to have that conversation with my mom, and I sort of tried to hedge around it. She knew that I was going to Twin Falls for something, and she asked, "What are you going to Twin Falls for this vacation for?" And I kind of just said, "Oh, I'm gonna go jumping," and I was vague about it. And she was smart. She goes, "Are you gonna go learn to base jump?" And I couldn't lie to my mom, right? Of
Right.
course. So I said, "Well, yeah, how do you feel about that?" And she goes, "Well, Brian, of course, I'm your mom. I'm worried about you, but I also want you to do what you love. So, like, go have
Sure.
fun, be safe."
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'd imagine then I already know the answer to the next question, which was how did she react to your walking away from the chemical engineering thing to go be a partner in a drop zone?
So unfortunately, my mom is not still around. She didn't get to
Oh,
see that transition in my life. She was killed by a drunk driver back in 2014.
oh wow, I'm really sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it sucks, dude. You know, you hear about people losing people to drunk drivers, and you never think that it's going to happen to you, and
Sure.
then it does, and it's pretty horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, I can only imagine. It's good to hear though that the stories that you've got about her are her being super supportive of the things that you were choosing to do that became a passion for you, because it's easy to assume that she would also be just as thrilled with the decision that you've made to continue to pursue it in this way,
yeah, yeah,
which is really cool.
yeah.
That must make you a little hypersensitive to the end of the day bonfire stuff. I mean, I'm guessing you kind of get to play mother bird with the jumpers around and making sure they're all being smart and safe when they leave.
You know, it's interesting. I mean, so I struggled with alcoholism myself. It runs in my family, I think. My
Hmm.
mom wasn't an alcoholic, but my father has struggled with it. And I continued to drink even after she passed away.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until 2018 that I managed to find sobriety. And I've been sober for about 6 years now.
Dude,
Actually,
congrats, man.
6 years as of yesterday, looking at my calendar.
Yeah,
So
congratulations and happy anniversary.
yeah, thanks. Thanks.
That's
Um,
really cool, man.
at first when I decided to, get sober, it was I had to remove myself from the bonfire, right? I couldn't be around it. But then eventually I came to this moment where it's like, well, I'm either gonna have to be okay being around the bonfire or I'm gonna have to quit skydiving.
Sure.
And I knew I wasn't gonna quit skydiving, so I just had to become okay with being around,
Sure.
being around the proverbial bonfire.
Yeah. Well, it's
Yeah,
funny because I've had a couple of people on the show and we've gotten into conversations about it, and alcohol and drugs are interwoven into a lot of the stories of our community. I mean, that's just kind of the
sure.
way it is. We're a kind of a wild bunch in the air and on the ground. And the people that I've had on that have gained their sobriety have great support groups within the sport for those
Yeah,
people that aren't drinking and don't partake. Because back when I started, I didn't drink at all when I started skydiving, and it was a constant source of I have to justify why I'm not, hanging around to drink, why I don't want a beer, why, because I just didn't like drinking.
yeah,
And that's changed dramatically now, which is a fantastic thing to see, because there really is a lot of support for people that just say, no, 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 I'm good. I'm going to drink water and I will hang out and have fun and I'll take pictures and I'll remember everything.
yeah. I was amazed and I'm incredibly grateful for it. Of course that was one of those things, right? Is that stopped me for a long time from deciding to get sober was, well, everybody else is drinking, it's like you do sunset load and then you go to the beer fridge, you grab a beer, right?
Sure.
And when I decided to get sober, I decided to be just like very upfront with everybody about it and very honest. I didn't want to try to hide it because I had hid my drinking for a long time from people.
Sure.
And no, I do not remember a single time where anybody tried to say, "You sure you don't want just one?" I just told people straight up, like, no, I decided I needed to quit drinking.
Sure.
Um, and everybody was cool with it.
Sure.
Um, and it was funny too. I didn't realize how many other people around the drop zone didn't drink until I wasn't drinking.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, yeah,
Well, I almost think in that community, you're almost kind of hyper aware of where you need to be respectful in regard to stuff like that. Like if I don't know somebody doesn't drink or anything, then of course I'm going to offer them a drink. But as soon as you know this person is sober, you instantly take care to make sure you're not crossing any lines. And
yeah,
yeah, I'm going to still do my thing and I'm going to sit here and have my drink, but I'm going to be respectful about it, right?
exactly. Yep.
Which is an amazing thing. And that's one of the overall overarching theme of this podcast has always been not so much jumping, but the community of skydivers. Because at the end of the day, we're a pretty fucking kick-ass group of people.
We're pretty cool. There's a lot of good people in this sport.
Yeah.
I have told so many tandem students who've asked me that question, like, how did you get into skydiving? And so many times I've said the phrase, like, well, it was the idea of the adventure and the thrill that got me into it. And it's been the community of people that has kept me in it.
Always.
You know?
Always. I mean,
And there are some weirdos in this sport, right?
ain't they?
And that's what I love about it is like it is a very broad, diverse group of people.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite things about the sport is in a room full of non-skydivers, I stand out like a sore thumb. In a room full of skydivers, I struggle to get noticed.
Yeah.
Which
Yep.
is, you will never be the weirdest one at the drop zone. You just won't.
Yeah.
Which is so fantastic because it's great. It's a fucking show, man. You come to the drop zone and you never know what you're gonna get, man. It's a Forrest Gump box of chocolates. It's fantastic.
Yep. One of my friends recently put it. She goes, "Well, we're all broken toys. We're just broken in different ways."
I
That's
like
what the
that.
drop zone is.
I like that. Yeah, it's very true. Well, and it's the drop zone is the biggest vague support group you've ever had. Like
Yeah.
there's no specific problem everybody has, but everybody needs support for something.
Everybody's got problems, right?
Yeah, man. So
Yeah.
speaking of, now we can get into Skydance stories because there's some fucking characters out there, boy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Like I said earlier, I was lucky enough to start jumping and flying for Ray. I think I started in 2006 with him, and jumped and flew for about 4 years. And the people out there were just, I mean, obviously they're just amazing, and still a bunch of people I still keep in contact with. A bunch of them I've had on the show, and people that are here, and sadly some that are gone as well. But just the characters. So you came in the year after me, so we obviously know some of the same people, but
Yeah.
I mean, you had to have just fallen in love with that place.
I mean, I did. It was like before coming here, all my friends were, roughly in my same age group, roughly in my same like socioeconomic area, right? And then I started jumping, and all of a sudden, I knew people who were older than me and younger than me, and worked in different industries and made more money and made less money.
Yep.
And you meet them and you go on a jump, and there's just this implied trust, like you're not going to kill me, I'm not going to kill you, and you build bonds
Yeah.
so quickly.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the foxhole mentality, right?
Yeah.
It's very much the band of brothers military kind of mindset, in that you are voluntarily putting yourself in harm's way. The
Yep.
difference being skydivers voluntarily put themselves in harm's way for a giggle, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
which makes it even somehow even more so, because you still might get yourself killed, but you're trying to have fun doing it,
Yeah.
and you become very fast friends. Or I found at the very least, even if it's a jumper I might not vibe with, there's still a level of respect there because you're
Yeah.
a jumper, which
Mhm.
is another great thing. There's a level of respect. I could absolutely not stand the sight of you, but on the drop zone, it's business. Let's get it done. You're a jumper. Hats off to you, whether I like
Yeah.
you or not, which is an
Yeah.
amazing thing because most communities can't say that.
Mm.
Now, you go from, I do a tandem once, fall in love. I start doing AFF in my backyard, even though I didn't know it was there, to
Yep.
now I'm an instructor and I'm bouncing around. And obviously, you made that leap to go in as a partner at Skydance. That's a big step. Like, did you know how big of a step it was before you got into it, or has it just been a constant, holy shit, I didn't expect this?
Let's go with door number 2. Yeah. I mean, I knew it was going to be a big change. I didn't know how big of a change it was going to be, right? I had no idea how drop zones run. What makes them tick, what keeps the wheels turning, right? I had just been an instructor and a jumper, and there's so much going on behind the scenes
Hmm.
that you don't know about and you don't appreciate until you're in it.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm I mean, obviously you're the ringleader of the circus at that point. You've got a fair amount of things that you have to handle, but I would imagine especially coming in with no previous experience with that kind of thing, even the aviation side of things, the aircraft side of things, just that is a full-time fucking job dealing with even just one pilot and all the shit the plane needs. But you've
Yeah.
got that plus all your instructors, plus all your gear, and then the property. And is the gun club still across the street?
The gun club is still there. I just heard a couple of shots a second ago.
Yeah, so you still got bang sticks going off across the street. I mean, there's a lot to take in.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
Definitely.
were you part of the transition when Ray sold the place and started working his way out?
I was not. So that was Chris Peterson, a guy named Mike, and another guy named Ben. And they bought it in 2017, I think, was their first year running it. So,
Well, I remember the transition going over, and I remember chit-chatting with Ray because I knew he sold the drop zone, but kept his air wing going. And actually, in a recent conversation, I believe he told me he was selling off the last of his aircraft, and he was finally gonna fully retire, and even became a fucking fun jumper again. Bravo, Ray.
yeah, exactly. He needed that after a long time.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like I'm stepping into Ray territory because I've been out of the saddle for a little while, and I'm getting ready to this upcoming season. I'll go get recurrent because I haven't been able to
Okay.
jump, and I'm kind of using guys like Ray as my role model to get back out there.
Yeah. Ah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
When you're gonna go get current, you said this year?
Yeah, well, so it'll be next season because it's just
Okay.
coming
Yep.
into winter here in Finland. It's going to get proper fucking cold. I don't even think the drop zone's open now as the weather has turned. But
Sure.
I had to take some time off. I had a couple of neck surgeries from too many years with cameras on my head.
Gotcha.
Had to fix all that shit. And now that that's
Yeah.
fixed, I think I can go back out and be a weekend warrior again.
Right on. Hell
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Nice.
So as you stepped into Skydance, have you guys had obviously it was a big change as you moved through management, but bringing you on, what were your primary responsibilities? Like, what did you take in your hat?
I've taken on a lot of the kind of the IT and the kind of the marketing side of stuff, and the kind of fun jumper engagement.
Nice.
Uh, so I've been trying to do a lot with, getting Skydance out there, getting the knowledge to Davis and the local areas that we are here, we skydive here, and you can skydive too. Trying to build kind of more of an online presence for us, get us up there in the search engine.
Sure.
And then Chris Peterson was running this place basically by himself for the past, 4 or 5 years until he brought me in.
Hmm.
And so, I'm trying to get organizers in on the weekends and trying to get events going, a couple of times a month, and trying to get people to help plan boogies. And we've got somebody new now doing all of our social media for us. Just trying to get people knowing that when they come here, there's going to be things going on.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and it's I mean, you're working on a hell of a legacy too, right? Because Skydance has got some crazy history of which I didn't know the half of until actually I started doing the podcast and had different people on and realized just how much history in the sport of skydiving Skydance takes a part of.
There's probably a lot that I still don't know. I mean, I walk around and we've got some, pictures and plaques on the wall, and I know that there's the picture of the Olympic rings.
Yeah,
And so I know that this place has a history. Most of it happened before I came here, and
sure.
there's a lot I probably still don't know.
I mean, it's just cool that obviously you love seeing it continue on and be passed on because drop zones like Skydance, either they're going to continue on and keep doing really well, or they just kind of fade away.
Yeah.
And Ray was the end of an era when he decided to sell the place. I was actually quite surprised because I thought they were going to end up burying him in the landing area. Um, I thought he was there
that'll
forever.
that'll be Bill Dawes at Lodi.
All right. Actually, I wanted
Yeah.
to ask that. I'm about to get to that. So,
Okay.
I was super stoked when he decided to not just close the doors and sell everything, but it kept on going and is obviously still doing quite well. So I follow you guys on social media, so I always love seeing, hey, there's events coming for this or that, and all the announcements that
Yeah.
are coming out, and that the
Yeah.
boogies are still going on. But yeah,
Yep.
you definitely brought up what I want to bring up. Is there still the feud between you and Lodi?
I don't think so. I mean, I have too much stuff to do to try to have an active feud with Bill Dawes or, or any other drop zone in the area. Like, we're all just trying to, have our piece of the pie. We're all trying to have fun. We're all trying to skydive, and we're all trying to
Sure,
bring more people into the sport.
sure.
I don't have the time or energy to have a grudge against somebody.
The funny part about the Skydance Lodi feud was everybody would be at Skydance, yeah, fuck Lodi, blah blah blah, but then they'd sneak over there for cheap jumps. So you're
Yeah, yeah.
like, all right, you're clearly just saying that shit because you want Ray to hear you say fuck Lodi,
Right, right,
you know.
right.
But yeah, I mean, I could do a year's worth of shows on Lodi and the history and stories behind that place.
Of course.
Of which I'll never do because I like try not to sling shit and a lot of the stories are not particularly flattering. So
For
we'll
sure.
we'll leave that. But there has been a long-standing feud between Lodi and Skydance, which I actually had Rich Grimm on, who does all the boogies around the world, and
Yeah.
Rich knows all about that and talked about how that kind of got started, and I think Ray even talked about it when I had him on the show as well.
Okay, gotcha.
So it's kind of fun. So, are there any big things coming up? Anything that we should know about? Any future plans with Skydance? Any big events? What's coming up?
I mean, not at the moment, right? We're kind of getting into it's going to be October pretty soon. We're going to be getting into the slow season. The days are already starting to get noticeably shorter.
Mm,
But we've always got stuff coming up. We've got like a 3-day scrambles event going on in October. I'd like to get we're now that the sun is coming up a little later, we're possibly going to be doing some sunrise jumps here in the next month before it gets too cold to want to do those.
nice,
Um,
nice.
we're looking at, potentially doing night jumps again in October. We just did them recently. It's nice to be able to do night jumps at 7 p.m. instead of 11 p.m.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
so yeah, just a lot of regular stuff going on and trying to, get ready for next season too.
Nice, nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, I remember flying night jumps in the pack for the American Boogie. I
yeah,
think probably the last year I flew for them full time. And we started flying the night jumps after I had flown a full day of the Boogie. I had enough
yeah,
time to stop, take a piss, get some food, and then get back in the plane.
yeah,
And they kept selling tickets for night jumps. It wasn't just one load. I was turning loads.
yeah,
Um, and I'll never forget the then at the time manager Neil, probably 3 hours into my flying night jumps, gets on the radio with a very slurred voice because he'd clearly been drinking, saying, "Hey, Princess, they want to keep jumping." And my response was, "They can jump all goddamn night long, but I'm not going to be fucking flying them. I'm done."
I'm done. Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah. But I mean, hey, we made the most of it, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, before we get going, I want you to pass along all the ways that people can track what's going on with Skydance, how they can come out and make a skydive. We have a lot of people from the Beginner Skydiving Forum on Facebook that listen to the show. So tell them
Cool.
about your student programs and all that kind of stuff, and yeah, just give us all the details.
I mean, we're all over the internet and social media. It's all on Facebook, Skydance Skydiving. Primarily, we do a lot of outreach on Instagram at Skydance Skydiving. We've got daily, 5 days a week or so. We're open. We try to do an update every evening beforehand to let people know, what time we've got loads going up the next day and what's going on and who's going to be out organizing. For anybody who jumps here, you can sign up on our mailing list for fun jumpers and we let people know what's going on. So all that kind of stuff. But Instagram is our primary platform for finding out what's happening.
Awesome, awesome. Now, are you guys packing in any end of the year AFF programs, anything like that, or is it just kind of shifting into winter gear now?
No, I mean, we still do a first jump course 5 days a week. So anybody who wants to book a first jump course and come out and learn to skydive can do it any day of the week, Thursday through Monday. Well, that's one of the things I've always loved about this place is we put a lot of focus into students' first jump courses. Since we offer the first jump course 5 days a week, most of the time when people book a first jump course here, they get one-on-one with their instructor.
Nice.
Sometimes if it's a Saturday or Sunday, maybe we got 2 or 3 people in the course, but a lot of times it's one-on-one with your instructor. And so, we definitely plan on keeping student jumps going, through the fall into the winter, all year round. And it can be a beautiful time to learn to skydive here, especially like it's not so hot. It starts to rain a little bit. As long as we don't get too much rain, everything turns green. It can be really beautiful.
Yeah, man. I mean, obviously the first 2 seasons that I jumped out there were winter seasons. I was one of only 2 instructors on staff all winter long. Funny enough, the tandem instructor that I worked with, I think the first full season was your AFF instructor, Kim. He and I were the only 2 tandem instructors at the time. And I remember his AFF courses being very much like you described.
Yeah.
Very to the point and not a lot of shall we say fanfare or grace involved, but
this is what you need to do. Don't die. Let's go have fun.
Which is fair enough, I guess. I mean, I can't fault him. Everybody's got their own style.
Yeah.
Look, Brian, man, I'm so glad that we were able to nail this down. I know we had to reschedule a couple of times, but I was super stoked to have you on. Skydance is one of my favorite drop zones on the planet. I absolutely loved Ray to death, and the fun jumper community and the staff that have worked there are some of my favorite people. And so I'm really glad that I got to sit down and chat with the next generation.
Well, thanks, man. I'm really, really happy to be here on the show talking to you. I'm glad we were able to make this work. And again, about Skydance, I mean, I just feel so incredibly grateful to be where I am now, to be able to look back and remember walking into my first jump course and then to now be helping, run this place. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of hours. It's a lot of stress sometimes. And I'm so glad to be putting all of that into a place that I love and care about so much.
Yeah, which is fantastic to hear. I mean, especially when it's somebody that is really looking to make it the best that it can possibly be, especially because your entire history is tied to some place like Skydance. So, man, all the best of luck to you and everybody, and please pass on a bunch of hugs to everybody I might know out that way, and I will look forward to keeping up with how everything goes.
Yeah, awesome. Absolutely, will do.
All right, brother, take care.
Thanks, Dean.
Well, there you have it. Another episode of the Lunatic Fringe podcast brought to you as always by, well, wait, not as always, actually. Brought to you now by Gyro. Formerly known as NZ Aerosports, you'll head to gyro.com for their next level line of canopies. By Pussfoot, the Extreme Sports Collective. Head over to pussfoot.com to check it out. By Summit Parachute Systems, check out summitparachutesystems.com to talk to Jarrett Martin and the gang about kick-ass pilot rigs, rigging courses, and more. By Flyaway Indoor Skydiving, go to flyawaytn.com and check out all the cutting-edge stuff to come. By Pure Spectrum CBD, head to purespectrumcbd.com to check out their wide range of CBD products. And as for us, head to the lunaticfringepodcast.com to listen to any of the hundreds of episodes currently available, hit the link for our YouTube channel, pick up your copy of the Lunatic Fringe book or The Accidental Stripper, and get a sneak peek at upcoming guests. Once again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
start, yeah.